Okay, good evening. How are we all doing today? uh, yeah, he's going to be so pissed. No, actually, the other one will be fine. The other one I don't think he cares that much. In fact, I think he's one of the only ones that actually watches the VODs on YouTube. So I'm not sure how I managed to have like more than one view, but unless the rest of you are doing it without telling me. Well, I didn't think that was the case either, because you guys aren't quite that into this. Oh yes, yes. Before I forget, let us talk about the fallout from regulatory action against the Aspera Corporation first. So for I don't know, posterity's sake, I guess. For those who don't know this, my channel has a meta game in a Discord that is sort of rather exclusive because you need to sign an NDA to get in there. Uh, Essentially, the point is that these, the people that are in the Discord, they form various corporations. They then the corporations are essentially video games or things that uh, the Discord wants me to stream, and so they then bid on what I should do during the sponsored broadcasts. Simple enough. And yesterday we found out, or rather, it wasn't yesterday that we found out, but rather yesterday we took enforcement action against one particular corporation, which was the corporation representing the game per Aspera, because obviously, if you look at the channel, they've essentially monopolized the market for the past week, and so the regulator, who is actually a good friend of mine, who bless her soul, decided to give up her rights to sponsor items and instead took on the almost thankless task of trying to wrangle this entire Discord full of lawyers, capitalists, senior analysts, senior bankers. um, and she's taken to it with a certain amount of gusto, which is great. Anyway, so we've come up with the proper how do we say, punishment or regulatory enforcement action against the Aspera Corporation. You need to tell me if my voice is not loud enough. I forget that I sometimes hit my microphone. Okay, we're good. And so we took action against the Aspera Corporation, and we've decided the punishment as thus. Essentially, the majority shareholders in the the three shareholders who between them controlled about 75% of the Aspera Corporation were forced to essentially sell, and in the metagame term, that means they can shift their shares to a different corporation, or they can cash out, etc. All that is possible, but essentially, between the three of them, their share of the Aspera Corporation has dropped from 75% to about 40%, and so you can imagine that instead of there now being a little cartel within the corporation, now all shareholders are getting a proper representation. And so that's and also enforcement action. Part of the enforcement action is that the Aspera Corporation is not allowed to bid until, what was it? Until for Monday's stream, right? Yeah. So that's not long. It's just 4 days, right? And so essentially what that means is that we are going to start, or rather, the regulator is going to start looking at whether there is an uneven representation of investor interest. Now, originally we had, and this is extremely topical, and I love it. Originally we had come up with this metagame because we were following the Citizens United decision by the Supreme Court in 2010. One quick second. Resolution to the per Aspera Corporation. Yeah, so we had originally essentially made this based on corporation are people and therefore have unlimited rights to free speech, and that was all fun and games for everyone until until certain shareholders decided that it was getting unfair because their interests within the corporations weren't being reflected properly. Now, having said that, I do not actually believe that their interests were not being reflected properly. We have taken action against the Aspera Corporation only because they because they were being mean. No, we've taken action against the Aspera Corporation because they were essentially monopolizing the streaming time. Not because that there were three shareholders who essentially cartelled themselves and monopolized the corporation. I should emphasize here that actually has nothing to do with the regulator or myself, because as per Citizens United and sort of the spirit of Citizens United, you have you have shares in the companies based on the shares, based on how much you have invested in the company. And I think that's fair, right? Like say if someone invests $5 in the company and then someone else invests $500 in the company, you would expect the $500 person to have greater interest than the $5 person. Now myself and our regulator only stepped in because the Aspera Corporation was abusing its market dominant position and not allowing me to stream any other game besides Aspera. And actually, the Aspera Corporation, in addition, also used a crisis to essentially solicit extra funds that they then locked within the corporation and would not allow others to use. And so therefore we forced a partial sell down to bring the to realign interests within, so that, and I love that anyone else who listens to this will have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, and yet it is basically the most amusing thing ever inside the Discord. In fact, it's insanely amusing to me, and I had to actually laugh about this for a good 5 minutes before I started streaming, because otherwise I would have or I would have started laughing, right? And what am I trying to say? Laugh track. At what time is it? 8:30. 8:30. There we go. Yeah, okay. So that's the resolution to the conundrum that has bothered us with the Aspera Corporation. Now let's move on to the actual topic of today. Today, what I want to talk about is actually my own writing project, and my writing is, as some of you who have read it, a rather dry, rather I wouldn't say less interesting, but rather it's more analytical than most science fiction. And in this, I actually took inspiration, somewhat, from one quick second. SRC starts at 9. Oops. In my writing, I actually took a lot of inspiration from the Empire novels of one of the absolute greats in the sci-fi world, Isaac Asimov. And I absolutely loved his original work, where the vast majority of it were small, was relatively small vignettes, 10,000 words or so, uh, that described very concretely the issues surrounding humanity and society, the breakdown of society, and then the reestablishment of society in the Foundation. And then it got a little bit too sci-fi for me once we started involving the second Foundation, the mule, and all of that stuff. That I didn't care much for. And and so as exactly for the people who have read Isaac Asimov will very much probably at this point jump down my throat, or maybe not jump down my throat, but express displeasure at this, because obviously the robot novels and then the later parts of the Foundation series were very well received, because they were very much about individual humans and how they managed to shape their societies around them, and all of that. Very cool. Just not what I'm interested in my stories. And as we'll see when we get through this, in my stories, the major characters are never ever individuals. And I do realize, for those of you who have read some of it, that a lot of this revolves around a little girl named Marissa Harper. But even then, that is not... Oh yeah. Even then, that is not really the case. Oh, actually, let me change this up just real quick so that I can... So it looks a little bit better. E0. And for those who are wondering, I'm using Mermaid, which is... Oh, why does it do that? It should start at the top. Okay. We'll figure it out later. Mermaid is essentially a markup language for flowcharts, or charts in general. And we'll actually see a different kind of chart down here. We'll see that in a second. And it's essentially, it's markup, it's not programming. Two different concepts. But essentially, if you look, it makes it really easy for me to then refer to things back and forth, right? So I have, unification era here, and this is canon. This is my original universe. This is also my original universe. And then this is unfortunately what I got distracted by. Oh, there's more here now. Oh no, this is about right. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll talk about that. But just to wrap up Asimov, my primary inspiration is his early work with the Foundation. And it's particularly inspiring to me because it is about the power and essentially it is about the power of science to rebuild civilization after the destruction of the Galactic Empire. So right away we can see that it is very much essentially what this is about, right? It's the power of science, of technology, but more importantly of the humanity, of what humanity is, and what causes humanity to do the things that it does. I should let me put a note in here. Discussion on Asimov. When did I start it? 2 minutes ago? We'll just say 12. Yeah. It's essentially Isaac Asimov's Foundation is about humans being humans, and if we can predict how humans as a population work, then we can nudge certain things in certain directions early enough that once the galactic civilization collapses, instead of 10,000 years of dark ages, it gets shrunk down to 1,000 years. And that's very, very compelling to me, not because I think it's possible. It might be, who knows, if we have enough computing power, maybe. But rather the idea that, it is at the end of the day a study of the human condition. Very much 100%, what humans tend to do when, society has stagnated, what humans tend to do when they're being faced with existential peril and all of that, and that is exceptionally interesting, and part of that, at least, is what I'm trying to capture here. Only part of that, because the difference being that in our case humanity started on Earth, and we're really looking at how it then expands into the universe in this area, at least. Yeah, I really want to write more about this. It's just that the various crossovers have been taking up so much of my time. Oh, what an astute observation. I'm not going to talk about that yet. Discussion on SRC starts at, what time is it? 16:20. Okay, so let's start. Essentially what happens in the Solar Research Council is that over a long period of human colonization of the solar system, like humanity rises and falls, populists rise, populists fall, and all of these are very interesting things that have a profound effect on the psyche of humanity, right? Actually, let's not even talk about this. Let's go straight to... Don't worry about this part. I wonder what I did down here. Because... yeah. Oh, okay. That doesn't matter. Okay. So, essentially what I wanted to talk about was this today, right? Or more than this, but we'll start with this. So, it looks really, I'm sure it looks very complex and very interesting, and is putting you guys to sleep as we speak. But that's what's wonderful about this, for me at least. The point being, in my writing, humanity starts colonization about the year 2050, and so that's what, 30 years from now. I can see that, like, realistically speaking, we start colonizing the lunar surface. In another 30 years, we'll send, some amount of colonization to Mars, some to Venus, and then maybe a little bit to Mercury, and then terraforming starts in these two areas. And in fact, it is my belief that Mercury is basically impossible to terraform. I don't think it's energetically reasonable to do so. So instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cover Mercury in just solar panels, thousands of them, millions of them, and that makes it an excellent, like, it's not, obviously not on the order of a Dyson swarm, and we don't want it to be, but because Mercury is so close and it takes so much heat, it makes it an excellent energy generator. And then you take that energy and then you just laser beam it to wherever you need it, right? Like, obviously Mercury is going to become an excellent how do you say, exporter of very cheap energy because of that, right? Like gigantic solar panels, and those solar panels, due to the fact that they are on Mercury, and they're not too afraid of being hit by space debris, they're very cost efficient as well. And then you combine that with the idea of using the heat from being so close to the sun, and using that heat to then drive certain other energy generations, then you get amazing amount of energy. And so essentially the point being that it takes about, how much is it? Oh, only 100 years before we 150 years from today before we start, thinking about colonizing Pluto and Charon. And then, of course, oh, that's not group here. I always, oops. I always get that particular name mixed up because when the first time I read it, I thought it was, ooh, excuse me. Because the first time I read it, I thought it was Kuiper, but it's Kuiper, whatever. Not Creeper, Kuiper. Belt. And so the story of the Solar Research Council really starts with what I term to be the Pluto Research Council. And and this is all absolutely serendipitous that it ends up, oh my god, don't do that to me, that the name ended up being PRC. Obviously has nothing to do with my personal preference, but I wanted the research council, I wanted the Solar Research Council, and I wanted it to start in Pluto, so it turned out to be the Pluto Research Council. Really? You don't get it? Okay. Well, the PRC is short for the People's Republic of China. And now you get it. Good. So anyway, all that aside, personal serendipity aside, essentially what I wanted to show with this and why it starts as Unification Era is that because of how far Pluto is, it was not very involved in, this is a timeline of colonization. This is not a timeline of civil wars, of conflict. But I can guarantee you, about every 50 years, a big war broke out somewhere in the solar system. And as more and more things got colonized, especially Luna, Mars, the wars expanded out from Earth. Keep in mind, Earth is up here. Earth is very much still alive. They expanded out from Earth and hit basically all of the colonies, right? And so, even as humanity expanded, shall we say, the downside that comes with human society, i.e., the relentless politicking, might is right, that kind of idea, all of that gets exported out into the solar system. There's no way that it wouldn't be, right? And so the very interesting thing for me is then what would happen for if there was some place that is removed from all of that, because it's just so far away and its angle is so oblique that it's very hard for Pluto to get involved. The Pluto and Charon system, because its angle is so oblique, I guess, compared to the actual planets, right? And so dwarf planets like Pluto and Charon, and especially Kuiper belt objects, travel at completely different what do you call them, around the sun, a completely different they travel at completely different paths, and so that takes them out of the greater human society for years at a time. And so the question becomes, if the people that lived there, if their original remit was science, exploration, and engineering, what happens when these people then slowly unite into a council that is made up majority of scientists, engineers, and and what was the last one? Raw miners, but those are part of engineers, really. And what is a government system like that do to control humanity? And that's sort of the goal of the Solar Research Council itself. as we have seen sort of in little hints that I've dropped over here, essentially what that ends up being is a quasi-capitalist society where almost libertarian, where how do I say, where because of continued growth in demand, or rather no, let me reverse that. Essentially, because we're in space, there is an almost unlimited supply of natural resources in the form of iron, in the form of water, hydrogen. So because we have almost unlimited energy, right, in the form of hydrogen, in the form of water and iron, we have an quasi-unlimited supply, and therefore we can stimulate and create a quasi-unlimited growth of demand to meet that supply, to match that supply. And so the underlying point of the Solar Research Council is that if humanity is able to satisfy its demands, then it's easier to have good government because people are busy not being very productive. And that sounds weird until we think about it, that until I, well, I mean, at least to me it sounds weird until I then think about it and say, yes, they're not like they're not being forced to attack other humans. So where do those human tendencies of competition and envy and all of that that passion go? Well, luckily enough, because the Solar Research Council was made up of majority scientists, engineers, and because I have personal experience in this manner, essentially all of the excess envy, jealousy, competitive spirit, meanness gets channeled into the sciences and technologies. And that actually means that we have an almost unlimited supply of energy, and that can channel an almost unlimited supply of science and development. And also that means that humanity as a whole, those who don't have, because not every human has that competitive spirit, humanity as a whole can be a little bit lazier because the government structure is built in such a way that it assumes that 10% of humanity are overachievers and 90% are average. Does that kind of make sense? Like, obviously 50% is where the average human is for a variety of reasons, but depending on how we define activity, like human activity and the pursuit of knowledge and competition, I feel very confident in saying that 10% of humanity are overachievers and 90% are average. And so the average people can go about their average lives, doing their average things, being their average white-collar workers. And because there is such an abundance of cheap energy, it's very easy for these people to put in a modest amount of work to get a relatively comfortable life in return. And I know I'm all over the place with this right now. I'll draw a chart of some sort. Actually, when we get to here, that is when I want to really dig deep into how the economy works, how society is split, and all of these things. I don't have extensive notes on it. It's all in my head, but I will have to start talking about this soon, quote unquote soon. Anyway, all that aside, the point I'm laboriously trying to get to is rather simple. It's that The Pluto had over about, what is it, 250 years figured this out. The Pluto Research Council, an amalgamation of the experimental and theoretical physicists on Pluto, with a lot of the deep space engineering companies and mandates that existed to explore the Kuiper Belt, were amalgamated themselves into the Pluto Research Council. Oops, again. And they did this simply because they could not depend on their parent formations on Earth or wherever else in the solar system, because they kept being human. Note that I'm not claiming that it's wrong to be human. Not in the slightest. I'm just claiming, a la Asimov, that humanity, when left as a great big mass of dudes and dudettes, will in very cyclical way fall back into disorder, disarray, until an entire generation is lost, and only then will humanity then rise up out of the ashes and then continue and develop, and then they'll descend once again into disorder and disarray for another generation until there's a rise out. And that is I've read enough history to essentially, like, that is almost clockwork, right? And in some ways, it's a very pretentious thing to say, because obviously everyone and their mother and their dog has opinions, made an opinion on this. Like, all the biggest thinkers in the world, the greatest philosophers, everyone has thought about this. That doesn't make what I'm doing, wrong. It's just I prefer not to write a treatise, because that's boring to me, and so I want to put my personal opinion on what humanity is in the form of a story like this, and also, unfortunately, in the form of a story like this, and as was so sharply pointed out to us earlier, in the form of a story like this that you see up there. And it's do you guys want to talk about that first? Because I think Star Wars is the one where everyone at least has some amount of opinions. So if you guys want to do Star Wars first, by all means, let me know. Yeah? Okay. Let's do Star Wars first then. Discussion. Is that how you spell discussion? Yeah. SRCx. Star Wars. What time was it? 33. Okay. So this is it's actually a little bit different compared to the other Solar Research Council crossovers. Like the 40K crossover, which I'm not even gonna bother talking about, because that's pure geekery on my part. This is not so much the Solar Research Council as it exists here, but this is the Solar Research Council as it gets reconstituted in the Star Wars universe in Hutt space. Oh wow, I just realized. Okay, so let's do this. Let's bring this back to normal. And yes, I do use emojis like that, fake emojis. Let me just pull up a map of it, because it's easier if we have a map. Galaxy. No, I don't want that map. Yes, someone was learning Photoshop and made a Star Wars Galaxy map. It's perfect for our use. So let me just put this up here. Oh, okay. Scale to canvas. No, that's oh no, that's, oh my god. did something wrong there. Scale to window. There we go. Okay, are we still seeing everything okay? Okay, good. I just want this item to be... No, I can't do it. So I'll just do it here. I'll just do it like this. Don't worry. Just give me a few hours. No, we're good. We're good. Okay, so someone made this. God bless their heart. Love it. I could never. But thank them for doing so. Let's just look at the Star Wars Galaxy map, because why not? Essentially, we are looking at... Can you see my mouse? Oh, you can't see my mouse, can you? Not like this. Color source. No, I'll have to share this window. Actually, you know what? No, I'm just gonna talk over this. Well, I have to, because my I didn't really prep my machine for streaming, so there's like, you know, like technically NDA documents that exist everywhere. But luckily our friend gave us coordinates. So if we look on coordinate, let's say S12 on this map, we'll see that that's smack deep in what is considered hut space. And I'm sure we all know what huts are. If you don't, go look it up. I'm not gonna bother. Essentially, the point is, what's going to happen is I'm going to talk about it in such a way that it, like, the only counterfactual in this particular society compared to Star Wars canon is that the Hutts were making use of the Republic financial system to enrich themselves, and so they I mean, I know some of you have already read some of that, so let me just finish what I'm saying. Essentially, the point is, the Hutts have embedded themselves into the Republic financial system. Yes, exactly. This isn't even beta yet, so a lot of this work is actually, like, you shouldn't take it as how it'll appear. But essentially, the point that I'm laboriously trying to get to, can I just finish my point, please? Is that the Hutts have given themselves untold riches by passing off junk bonds as AAA bonds. Yes, it's essentially the subprime crisis. Yes, absolutely. And and so the counterfactual is that is really the only thing that changed, and then we throw in a rebellion, and then we look at how, well, that's how the story starts, at least, right? So the story starts in this way, where the Hutts themselves have already completely embedded themselves into the Republic system. There are rolling bonds that the Hutts are using to fund their lavish lifestyles, and, you know, essentially it's one gigantic Ponzi scheme. Speaking of, Bernie Madoff just died. Yeah, the balls on that man. He's, oh my god. No, I'm not giving a eulogy to Bernie Madoff, okay? Like, he got what he deserved for doing what he did. Um, but credit where credit's due, he made it work. And I don't think most of you lot, including myself actually, I don't think anyone here could have made that work. So like there's a certain amount of respect you have to give to a supervillain, and certainly in my eye, Bernie Madoff was basically a supervillain, right? What do you mean? Of course he was a supervillain. Like, like if this were like, I don't know anything about comic books. I'm sure Batman has a villain that is like a rich. Oh no, isn't Lex Luthor essentially no? But he's a technology guy. No, I'm sure there are some superheroes that have, yeah, whatever. Doesn't matter. That's not the point. Bernie. Oh my God, let me look this up. You know, I'm not even gonna make look this up. It's fine. It's completely distracting from the point of the talk, which is that the Hutts have embedded themselves into the galactic system via, you know, lucrative trades for, you know, people that are looking for value, right? Looking for growth. And partially this is just because of a quirk in the Star Wars universe. And I don't get me. Actually, I need to put this down. 1 second. Complaint about the stagnation in Star Wars due to fans. What time is it? It's at 41:45. Essentially, my problem with the reasoning for why the Star Wars universe is essentially stagnant is that when we talk about the past, all games in the Star Wars universe are selling a power fantasy that was given to them in the movies or in the TV shows. Actually, I haven't never watched the TV show, so I'm not even going to talk. But essentially, everything up until, you know, probably the prequel series, so that's 99. Until then, everything was about selling that particular power fantasy that only existed within the first 3 movies and some parts of the extended universe. And that meant that the universe could not change. Right? Like, it couldn't, because if the universe was wholly different 1,000 years ago, then suddenly you're no longer selling that power fantasy. And so Star Wars got locked into this stagnant universe, not at all due to, you know, they'll come up with reasons why it's stagnant, 100%. But fundamentally, its stagnation doesn't come from, like, there'll be people who talk about Jedis, you know, the being stagnant, a force of stagnation and all of that. But fundamentally, the stagnation comes from the fans wanting their own power fantasy. And you know what? That's fine. I'm okay with that, because it allowed me to do this. And let me get into it. Essentially, the point is, because the galaxy had been stagnant for so long, you know, technology hasn't really developed in however many 10,000 years in the galaxy. The big banks in the galaxy are starved for yield, right? Like, they cannot have great yield in a stagnant society like that. It's just impossible, right? Like, even if you include a whole bunch of colonies that are slowly being colonized, and slowly, you know, there's trade going on and all of that, it is a stagnant society because there's no tech development, and therefore their financial systems are stagnant. And so that's where this entire thing rests on, is because their financial systems were stagnant. When and I'm hovering my mouse over Hutt space, but you guys can't see it. Regardless, HUD space is what? S12, right? Yeah, S12. And because of the way, because it was stagnant, essentially, once the HUDs made contact, like once there was enough contact between the HUDs and the Republic, essentially it starts off small. Little venture funds, a few hedge funds invest in HUD space, and then the HUDs see all this free money, and because they're greedy oligarchs and capitalists, they'll make it work, right? They'll make those investments work because that'll bring in new investments. And so that's a virtuous cycle of investments getting brought into HUD space that then leaves their owners, their investors in Republican space better off. And that's wonderful. And the more that happens, the more integrated those two economic systems become. And at one point, you're just going to invite the ratings agencies in, because why wouldn't you? Right? The moment you can pass off a bond as AAA, it doesn't matter if the bond itself is AAA or not. The moment you can sell a bond as AAA, then suddenly you have huge, gigantic institutional investors that will also then start buying your bonds, especially if you can price your bonds at 3%. Can you imagine a AAA bond at 3%? Who wouldn't buy that? Like, what kind of pension fund wouldn't buy that if they were so starved for yield in a stagnant society? Of course they would. There's just no reason for them not to, right? And I realize we're running out of time. So today we'll solely talk about Star Wars, and next time I'll talk about the Mass Effect crossovers, which I don't know if they're more interesting. At least there was more action, and therefore it led me to write more about it. But anyway, all that aside, because suddenly the HUDs invited the ratings agencies in, and with the help of hedge funds, I have no question. There's no question in my mind that hedge funds within the Republic would help the HUDs repackage their crap junk bonds, junk assets as AAA, right? Like, and why wouldn't they, right? Like that's the whole point of subprime, right? Like and I mean, you might not get AAA, but you get a decent. You throw it through a few layers, and then what used to be like BBB is now AA, and suddenly AA is investable 100%, right? And so you'll have retirement funds, you'll have pension funds, you'll have insurance companies. What else did I say? It doesn't matter, but you'll have those gigantic institutional investors. And remember, this is a universe of billions of planets and trillions of people. I can't remember, something along those lines. So there is a lot of money that is just sloshing around in a stagnant society, right? So if they get, like, at home they get 0.05% investing in government bonds, why would you not jump at the chance to get a 3% bond that is rated by the big ratings agencies as AA? You would. Everybody would. Everybody here. I'm not even going to dignify that with a response, because I know for a fact that you would. So someone was giving in the Discord was giving a passionate plea of saying that nobody will be that stupid. But history has shown us that yes, they are exactly that stupid. And it's not even that they don't do their due diligence. They might very well do their due diligence, but how far down can you go when you are, like, let's say the core, right? The core is at let's say the core is at L11. Actually, let me look at the map in detail. let's say you are on Corellia. Where the hell is Corellia? Corellia is right there, and that is M11. And you're looking at assets as a ratings agency. And actually, let me go down. I think we have Corellia. Yeah, we go. Our ratings agency is Corellia Galactic, Alderon Financial, Corellia Galactic, and IBC Ratings. IBC is the Intergalactic Banking Clan, which is one of the big. This is definitely a too big to fail bank, by the way. And it's not just a too big to fail bank, it's a series of too big to fail banks. And in fact, according to official lore, the IBC has essentially taken over most of the finances in the Republic. So yeah, why wouldn't they also have their own ratings agency, right? It just makes sense. Anyway, all that aside, yeah, if you're in the middle of the galaxy, in right smack deep core, and you're looking at assets that are sitting, like in what amount to be barbarian space on, what was it, S12? Yeah, so like go from M11 to S12 left. That is, a journey. And if there are banks, hedge funds that you sometimes pretend that you respect telling you that this is AA, or that are trying to get these certified as AA, and you have continuing relationships with them. So for example, if a hedge fund within the IBC comes to its own sister IBC ratings company and says, bro, hook a bro up, and they make it easy for you. Of course, they give you the rosy view such that you can just say, okay, it's AA, right? Like, I mean, you guys have all been there. Why am I even explaining this? Well, I'm explaining this to other people. Don't worry. The the point is, this will happen because this has happened, and as greedy as humans are in the Star Wars universe, and as greedy as all the other species are in the Star Wars universe, this will absolutely happen, and nobody can convince me otherwise. And anyone who thinks otherwise doesn't understand either the human condition or greed in general. Anyway, we're good. So the Hutts get all of their bonds nice and rated at investment grade, and all the big institutional investors pile in, and everyone's happy for a couple 100 years, and so they get even more money, and so the Hutts become really, really rich, like obscenely rich, because they're running a giant Ponzi scheme, and really all they have to repay is are the interest payments. And interest payments, you can just do whatever, right? Like you can just take out a new, essentially the loans themselves become rolling loans, and then you just take out a new loan every now and then to pay for the interest and pay yourself even more money. I'm not even going to. I can't answer that. Not on stream. Suffice it to say, yeah, we've seen that. Oh, actually, no, I can talk about a different one. Greensill. Greensill did exactly this, right? Greensill sold loans to, well, this might be a little bit more complicated, but essentially, you guys know Greensill. Greensill does supply chain financing, which means, in our current Earth year 2021, if a supplier, if a factory wants to buy something from a supplier, say for example maybe not a car factory, a book factory, a printing press wants to buy paper, the printing press doesn't send the money right away. The paper gets delivered to the printing press, and maybe 30 days later the money gets to the paper mill. And so what Greensill does is, well, one part of what Greensill does is they pay the paper mill early, and then once the terms are due from the printing press now pays Greensill instead of paying the paper mill. And so that they're taking that arbitrage in the middle of printing press and paper mill, and they're making a few cents off the dollar. Maybe not even a few cents, half a cent off the dollar, and that's good. That's excellent. But what Greensill also does is it goes to potential paper mills and says, we could see you potentially in the future maybe selling your paper to someone else, to this other printing press. And so we're going to loan you some money on the assumption that someday you're going to sell paper to that printing press, and that press will then pay you. And so then instead of that press paying the paper mill, that press will then pay Greensill. And this is technically, it's iffy whether that's truly legal or not, but it's what Greensill did, and that's how Greensill made so much money. Because now you don't even need to have a proper invoice to make this happen. Well, I think they still issued proper invoices, or they pretended to issue proper invoices. But that in effect became a loan to the paper mill, right? So the paper mill essentially got a huge chunk of money up front, and every time the money was supposed to be due, they would just roll it over, and the paper mill would only pay Greensill some amount of interest payments. And wait, did you not know that? That's literally what Greensill did. Well, they're in administration now, right? Yeah, that's literally what Greensill did. And that's all good, fine and good for normal times. Well, what happens if you fail to meet a margin call? Bam, right? Like the moment the Greensill itself could not afford its own bonds, its own debt, everything falls apart, right? Like literally the moment, and that's what happened. Greensill couldn't afford its own collateral to post more collateral. I think I actually don't know if it's because they couldn't post collateral. It probably is though. I can't see it any other way. Actually, let's find out. Greensill posting collateral. No, that's not it. No, this is all about Credit Suisse now. I don't care. Yeah, the Greensill definitely filed for insolvency, but that's because they did not post their collateral. I can't. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Suffice it to say, Greensill didn't have money when it needed money, and so it went into insolvency. And so everything blew up basically right away, right? And so all the companies that Greensill had loaned money to on the assumption that someday they would find a buyer and then the buyer would pay Greensill, suddenly there's a whole bunch of lawyering that needs to be done there. Because is it a loan or is it a invoice? And I'm fairly certain the US treats those two things very, very differently. And anyway, that's all besides the point. The point is, the Huts did something similar, where because the good times just kept rolling, and so they just rolled their debts over, and even issued new debt, because why wouldn't you, right? Like obviously there are, it's not simply as easy as, oh, give me money and I'll pay you interest. There is financial engineering. There is obfuscation of where the actual assets are and all of that, and we do actually get into that here. Let's see. Well, they could have dealt with the yes here. The one of the Hut corporations defaulted on a bond payment. Was a small mining conglomerate owned by the great Java, and when private investigators hired by the bondholders actually visited the underlying assets, they found that mining stations and warehouses that were pledged as collateral was either just completely non-existent, or the dude ran off with his assets. And And so that led to a complete collapse in well, I mean, this all happened because of rebellion, right? So there was rebellion, and then suddenly the good times were no longer good times, and everyone just went to hell. Anyway, we've been at this for an hour. Oh my god. But this is life. This is great. I now feel bad for having done this while he was asleep. Well, both of them were asleep actually, because they would have actually been able to give us all the details on Green Cell. Oh man, it's just sometimes things don't work out, you know. It's okay. We'll apologize to them. And besides, they're both weebs anyway. Tomorrow I'll just fly over Japan for our Friday broadcast. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We can talk about Green Cell then if we really wanted to. Actually, you know what? We might have to pour one out for Bernie tomorrow. Yeah, no, because I didn't he work with Bernie Madoff? I feel like he did. Well, it's fine. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Anyway, in conclusion, thank you very much for watching. The writing, my writing is definitely a reflection of my view of humanity, right? I want to emphasize here that my view of humanity is actually fairly optimistic. You know, we talk about all of this fun financial engineering stuff and Green Cell and Bernie, but the underlying message of the Solar Research Council is that humanity will overcome, humanity will develop, and humanity will continue to exist where other species have failed. And that to me is the most important message that underlies all of the Solar Research Council. Like there is nothing else that is more important to me than that. Let me put that in here. Underlying optimism of humanity, written in the SRC. And what was that? 1 hour, let's say 1 minute and 45 seconds. Well, I don't want to put Green Cell in there. Anyway, we'll wrap it up for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow for our Friday broadcast. Yeah, again, this was fun. In conclusion, download Firefox, don't use Chrome, and we shall see you tomorrow. Bye bye. I think. Yeah, we're good.